Well, welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and indie professionals in the indie publishing industry. Today, I've actually got a friend live in studio with me, Mr. Willsin Rowe. He's one of the authors to introduce you to today. I've got my co-host, David, back again. Hi, David.
Hi, everybody.
Back on screen again, too.
Oh, yeah.
And our second author to introduce you to today is David Michael.
Hey, that's me.
Now, both of our guests today are male authors who write in the romance genre. So we're going to be talking about that today. But we're going to give Willsin the stage first. So Willsin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Willsin Rowe. You might hear from my voice, I'm from Australia. I've been writing for around about 10 years as a published author with a lot of gaps in there. I also work as a cover artist. I also write under the female pen name of Abby Aiken, branching around from sweet and funny sort of erotic romance through to harder stuff, some BDSM stuff, which I've co-written with a certain person. And
what's your current book that you're working on right now?
The one that I'm getting close to releasing, it's one I previously released it under the Abby Aiken name. It's called Playing House. It's more of a romantic comedy, but an open door romantic comedy. So there's plenty of hot stuff once it gets started.
Lovely. Can't wait to read that.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to turn it over to David now. Go ahead and tell us about your stories and what level of heat you've got in them.
I'm David Michael. I've been writing for, God, as long as I can remember. I think my first short story was published when I was in 5th grade. But as far as the indie world goes, I published my first, it'll be 3 years this year. Holy cow. My first series was Paranormal Romance. That's a series of 5. It got pretty hot and heavy towards the last couple of books. The first one is about a Mormon girl. So while she was grappling with the Mormon thing, there was very little steam in that book, but it quickly made up for it in the second book. And then just got worse and worse and worse from there. And then the series I'm working on right now is a trilogy about 3 brothers who are all porn stars. So as you can imagine, it's pretty hot and heavy at times.
That sounds like fun. What's the title of that one?
That is the Dick Dynasty series.
Oh, and it's a great title to go with it, too.
Yeah, you've got Porter, Parker, and Preston will be out hopefully by the end of next month.
Wonderful. So now tell me, usually romance is a female-dominated genre. You usually got the female authors writing this stuff. Now, as a male, how did you start into writing romance? What got you interested in it? And do you feel that as a male, it's harder or easier to write in romance or erotica?
To use probably a misplaced term, I sort of came in through the back door.
Wow.
I came through erotica first. I started out writing erotica. I basically remember finding porno mags when I was too young to find them, like 12 or 13. And I was interested in the stories as much as the pictures. Well, as much, inverted commas.
We always read.
We all read the articles.
The articles. Yeah, absolutely. But I actually did enjoy reading them, and I remembered them later on when I'd felt the need to write since I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I'd written a few things here and there, and never developed the ability to turn them into a proper story. I could write humorous little poems or silly stories that never went anywhere, had no point, but they were just a bunch of silly things. And I thought I really wanted to learn how to write stories. I remembered those stories from way back and how in memory they were actually pretty poorly written. And I thought, well, they were written for men. I'd like to see how it would be for a man writing for women. So that was essentially the seed. And from the erotica, I started branching across further into romance.
Okay, David?
So my first series was actually intended to be a young adult series. I don't know how I know exactly how it went, I guess you'd call it. But I got into it mostly because of actually an Australian friend of mine who writes romance and erotica. She was on my beta team, and she kind of held my hand through the process of publishing my first book. She was like, you've got a fantastic story here, but I think to really connect with your readers on the level that you want to, you've got a bunch of 20-something-year-olds locked in a house. They're going to be having sex with each other. Like, that spark is there. Why are you not writing about that? And I was like, you're right. Like, sex is a natural part of human nature. So why am I ignoring that giant tool I could be using to further my writing,
so to speak?
So that's kind of where I went with it. And it was kind of interesting with my first book because it was male female and I'm a gay man, so I was like, well shit, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this believable? So while I was writing it, I actually wrote it as male romance and then just changed verbiage as I went along, and my beta team helped me catch all that stuff. And the girls were really, really big on, well, girls want to feel emotion in the writing and they want to know what it feels like to be touched by this character. So they pushed me pretty hard to get that stuff in there instead of the graphic. I think men, especially in the romance category, tend to go for the graphic descriptions and this is what it looked like, this is what I was doing, versus this is how it made me feel.
I had a little definition I used a while back. I'm not sure if I'll remember it absolutely, but it was for men writing it, it's about how and where and maybe how many times, but for women it was more about how it felt and why.
Right.
Yeah, that's very true. When we co-write things, because he writes under the Willsin and the Abby name, and then I obviously write under my name, but I also write as Rosalind Sparks when I do Erotica. Together, when we write, he's actually the more touchy-feely, flowery language, and I'm usually the blunt, this is what happened, this is why it happened. We're the opposite when it comes to that.
Yeah, but it works.
It does.
I like it. That's awesome. What categorizes it as erotica as opposed to like a mainstream fiction? Because you can, in mainstream fiction, you are allowed to have sex scenes and stuff like that.
Again, a sort of snappy little thing I came up with was, metaphorically speaking at least, if he has to hold her hair out of the way so you can see what's going on, it's erotica.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty apt. I mean, I personally think that it's a level of description and a lot of verbiage that draws that line. As an indie author, it can get us in pretty hot water. I mean, if you classify a book as romance and it's erotica, people are going to get pissed. Those hardcore romance readers that are like, I don't want this smut in my books.
Right, because there are certain expectations when they go into
right. Right, yeah. And it goes the other way as well. If you classify a book as erotica and it turns out to be romance, those erotica readers get pissed and mark you down on ratings, and it's like, and it's a big blurry line. Honestly, you can read blogs for days about what classifies as romance, what classifies as erotica, and none of them agree with each other. So it's a really fine line to walk, I think, and all we can really do is hope that we did it right.
And sort of declare your intentions.
Right.
Well, let me ask you guys this. What if, mainstream fiction, a lot of books are adapted into films, right? I haven't really ever heard of an erotic book, aside from like 50 Shades of Grey, being adapted into a film. So do you think it would be possible to approach that? Like, do you think that you could pitch your erotic novel or one of your erotic novels to be produced as a film?
It's actually been done fairly recently. Selena Kitt, she runs Excessica, was one of the first publishers I was with. Mm-hmm. She has a series, Babysitting the Baumgartners, and then there's a whole bunch of other titles, and I don't remember them all. An actual erotic filmmaker joined the stable at Excessica as a writer, and they kind of got their heads together. I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but Babysitting the Baumgartners, and I'm probably saying that wrong with my accent, got made into it's a hardcore erotic film. I've seen the previews, and it looks pretty hot. But I think it's a 4-hour piece of work.
Good Lord.
Yeah. They are some energetic actors.
4 hours?
4 hours, I believe. I'm not 100%, but yeah, there's obviously some energy on that set.
No,
and energy drinks, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
With blue pills crushed up in them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Never.
Like, the 50 Shades again, I mean, I'm sure it's terrible. I've never watched it or read it.
But, like it or hate it, those movies definitely got traction. Or the books got traction.
Oh, yeah. And sex is
more mainstream.
It's sort of blurring the line now. I mean, take Game of Thrones, take, a lot of the shows on like HBO and stuff. They have a lot of erotic elements. I mean, they show sex, a lot of sex. And I mean, sex has been used to sell everything these days. You know, I mean,
Look at any Carl's Jr. commercial.
Exactly, like that one that's called like the triple climax or whatever, and they call it out. They call themselves out on it.
I don't know these things. We don't have them in Australia.
It's not important.
You're innocent.
Trash.
Really?
No.
No, I've seen some of your TV shows. Wasn't there a show called Laid?
Yeah, the lady with the bewitched vagina. That's
Yes,
right.
see? And you're so sweet.
That sounds like it's up there with the movie Teeth.
Dude, that's exactly what I was just thinking. That one.
This one was far more metaphorical. This was a woman who, her ex-boyfriends were all dying, and she just basically believed that it was her vagina had cursed them.
Wow. That sounds pretty funny.
Yeah, it was a great comedy.
I watched the first season of it. Did it ever go to a second season?
I don't think so. Shame.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was very fun.
Hey,
But
Dave.
yeah, erotic elements are in everything these days. So I think the distinction between romance and erotica or anything that has sex in it is what is the intent of the story. If the story's intent was just pure titillation, then yeah, it fits squarely into that erotica peg. If it's, more about the romance, more about the relationship, then it fits more into the romance genre. Even if it does have graphic sex in it, the intent of the story was to show the development of that relationship, at least in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to, being a storyteller, it's like we talked several episodes ago about, the sort of fade to black versus, how much can you say. Katie, we brought up the specification of using a condom as a positive thing.
Yes, for young adult. For young adult. That was the context we were talking about. But yeah, it's the intent of what you're trying to do that helps you define the genre.
Yeah.
And then, you'll see sex pretty much anywhere. And I think even into young adult, we're seeing sex or mentions of sex being considered okay, depending on how you use it.
Yes, of course. Because you can use it for evil intentions. But again, you have to be true to the story. You have to be true to the characters.
With great power comes great responsibility and all that jazz.
Absolutely. And as the storyteller, you are the god of that world you just created.
Right.
So use that pen wisely, or in our case, the keyboard.
All of you guys write under your pen names for erotica and stuff like that, and you also write under mainstream fiction. Why do you keep the two separate?
Partly it's branding. I brought about Abby Aiken a few years back just because I wasn't sure whether being a man was actually putting people off reading me. So I thought I'd try a slightly different style of storytelling under a totally different name. I chose something cute and also something that sort of, it has a bit of a potentially dirty ring to it, like Aiken for it.
Oh, nice. I like that.
So,
Willsin.
And Willsin.
Okay.
There's a girl I work with came up with that version of it.
Yeah.
With that spelling.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's partly branding, so that, if you're getting a Willsin book, in my case now, all Willsin books celebrating the fuller female figure, because, basically they always say you should write what you love. I'm quite fond of fuller female figures. It's just a genre I really enjoy writing. But as Abby, I will write, it's a bit dirtier, it's a little bit harder. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes it's just really playful. I think it's more what a woman would probably write.
Okay, and what about you, David? Do you actually use a pen name?
Kind of. I use my first and my middle name as my pen name, but that's for completely vindictive reasons, not necessarily because not necessarily because of branding. I'm not a big fan of a certain member of my family, so I didn't want his last name on my books.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So do you think that there are any risks with, like, for example, let's say that Katie did break away from her pen name, right? And every single book that she has ever written is under Katie. Do you think that there would be any sort of backlash from her readers? Because, you're really putting it all in one melting pot now. Like, what do you think the risks associated with breaking down those barriers might be?
I think Deadpool, the movie, serves as a pretty good example of what can happen. It's a superhero movie, so parents took their kids. They didn't bother to check what kind of movie it was in some cases, and they ended up being angry with other people because they hadn't checked. If I was to write anything else as Willsin Rowe other than erotic romance, if I wrote even YA, where sex is sort of hinted at, I run the risk of someone buying the book because they like the author and getting something they didn't bargain for.
And specifically young adult and erotica do not play well together.
That sort of allows you to reserve distinction, to cut, make sure that you don't mix those things up.
Even if you're completely open about all the names, people know that they're buying a Rosalind Sparks or a Katie Slides. They will know with Rosalind Sparks they're getting something hot and dirty. They'll know with Katie Slides they're going to get something with vampires or werewolves, and something that's a little bit more
much tamer.
Well, tamer, but it's a broader marketplace as well, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And that was the reason I split, because originally everything was under Katie Slides, but the minute I wrote the first young adult book, when the Little Werewolf series started, I had to think seriously about it, and switching to the pen name to create that separated brand was the right choice to make.
Okay. So then, as a storyteller, do you feel that you have more freedom to be able to express sex as part of the narrative? We did previously talk about the fade to black, but now you don't have to. You have the opportunity to tell the complete story. David, you just said you were in one of your novels, one of your beta readers mentioned that sex is a part of life and that you should be talking about that. So now as a storyteller, did you feel a lot more free to express all of that once you made that decision?
Not particularly for me personally. It was more of a getting a handle on the verbiage. I mean, it was a new tool in my tool belt, and I needed to learn my way around it. So, I mean, I'd call it more of a learning curve versus a comfort level in talking about it. Probably because of my upbringing, I've always had a very open family. We've always talked openly about sex. So it really wasn't a thought for me, more as a career choice. And then, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to be able to do it well. So it was more a matter of practice makes perfect for me.
And I like that you listened to your beta readers and you really took their advice to heart and expanded the story based on that. That's really what we should be doing. We should be listening to any of our sample readers to get that feedback, because, like you had said originally, you're writing from a gay man's perspective, assuming what you think is correct. And without their input, you could have pissed off a whole bunch of readers.
Oh yeah. I mean, even my male books. I mean, as authors, I know we all try to read as much as we possibly can within our genre, but beta readers are a whole different creature. I mean, those people read a lot, so they know what works, what's working, what isn't working, and they just have a better feel for books, per se. Whereas us as authors, we get wrapped up in our characters, I think. And for instance, the book I'm working on right now, I just wrote a scene, and one of my beta readers left me a comment that was like, the only way that you could have gone from this position to this position is if he was sitting on the bar stool. And I was like, he was sitting on the bar stool. And she was like, you should probably tell us that. And I was like, I did. And I scrolled 4 pages and I was like, shit, I didn't mention the damn bar stool. So, I mean, beta readers, to me, my beta readers are my heroes. I have a team of 10 and they're an amazing bunch of girls. And they save my ass often.
That's awesome. Now here's the burning question that'll be on all of our minds, or all of our viewers' minds. When you're writing a sex scene, how are you visualizing it? Are you acting it out? Are you positioning yourself as you write? I know Wilson's guilty of it.
I do. I'll write it out before or as I'm writing it. I'll actually get up, walk around the room, think about what I'm doing, work out the angles of arms and legs, and then just see if I can find a nice way to say it.
What about you, David?
For me, writing is not my only job. So I write at work a lot. I write on the way to work when I ride the train to work or what have you. So I don't really have the luxury of, bending myself into a pretzel in public. But I'm one of those lucky people. I've always been a pantser. So I just kind of word vomit and then make it pretty during editing. But it gets a little awkward, I think, as a man writing in public, especially when you get into the sex scenes. And these scenes are a little too tight for this.
A follow-up question to that. When you guys are writing the sex scenes, how can you gauge how exciting they are? Like does it excite you as you're writing them? and then, going back and editing, how do you decide, okay, this is still like super hot, or like maybe I was a little too aroused at this point? Like how do you write good sex in books?
I really, honestly, I use my penis as a thermometer. I mean, if it's good, I know it's good. If I have to get up and walk away and take a break and be like, whew, holy cow, I know what I wrote was good, and I know my fans are going to love it. So, I mean, I think guys may have that as both an advantage and a disadvantage when it comes to gauging the level of steam in a scene.
If you're not aroused by it, your readers aren't going to be aroused by it. So now, speaking of your readers, back to the question of it's a female-dominated genre. So as a male, are you finding it easier or harder to market your work? And what is the response you're getting from the female audience?
For me, it's a strange kind of thing because the B-male is a novelty aspect, and it gets a few people sort of meerkatting. They sort of, oh, a male. Like, it doesn't necessarily equate to that they will read you, but they're interested to know that you're a writer. I've a lot of connections on Facebook who came about through a particular Facebook group dedicated to curvy women romance. It's called Curvy Girl Romance is the Facebook group. Look them up. So a great deal of my Facebook connections are through that. And they do seem to enjoy the presence of a man who enjoys the curvy form. I can't really give any indication on how well they receive the work. I've only put out, I think, 2 books since I was in that group.
Okay, so who is more successful, Willsin or Abby?
Willsin is more successful at social media. This book that I'm putting out again is Willsin. I had it in an anthology with some really big names, and it got to like number 34 on Amazon. So technically, I guess Abby's been more successful, but that hasn't really rolled over into anything more yet.
Okay, and what about you, David? How have you gauged your success, but also how have they perceived you with your male-male and also your male-female? Like, how have you done in each side?
The United series was the first series I did, the paranormal romance. With it being a series, they've done equally well. So, I mean, it's been really, really weird. The number of people who have been like, my male book in my first series is book number 4. So by the time they got to that book, they were so invested in the series, they weren't going to be like, okay, I'm not reading that book. It's male. So a lot of these girls were sending me messages saying I never would have read male had I not been so invested in the previous characters, but I'm so glad I did. That opens up a whole new genre for me. And so, I mean, as an author, what more success can you ask for? But yeah, it's been really strange, the number of people who have kind of come to me saying, you've turned me on to male. This opens up so many books for me that I never would have read before. So that's pretty cool for me. And the book coming up, the last book in the Dick Dynasty series, is going to be male as well. And people are pretty excited for it.
I can't help but laugh at that title. It's just so awesome.
Well, and it's funny because my friend Amy and I were sitting on the beach in North Carolina, of all places. I was on vacation there visiting her. We were talking about the Duck Dynasty. It was when they had that big drama about all the gay stuff, and there was just a lot of problems in the gay community with the Duck Dynasty at the time. And we were talking about that, and she had made some kind of joke about the Dick Dynasty, and I was like, light bulb, I can work with this. And it just kind of built into this, their dad was a super mega famous porn star, and then he had 3 sons, and they all got into the porn industry as well, and that's how it became the Dick Dynasty. So it was just kind of one of those aha moments for me. But yeah, it'll be male, and I'm kind of interested to see where it goes because I have a much larger fan base now than I did with the United series.
Oh, that's cool. Well, congratulations on all that. And how has your male-female work been perceived as well, or received rather?
It's been received very, very well. It's been a big struggle just getting it out there. As I mean, any indie author can attest. That's the biggest part of the job is getting your books in front of people.
Of course, and getting them to care. It's really tricky because there's so much out there.
Right, and a lot of it's really, really good stuff. A lot of it's really, really bad stuff. So getting it out there and having your name associated with the really, really good stuff is really the trick. I am one of 8 members of a group called the Romance and Erotica Author Fraternity on Facebook. It's one of the fastest growing reader groups on Facebook right now, and it's 8 male authors that all came together because being a male author in the romance and erotica genre can be a struggle. So we all kind of band together to share our fan bases with one another, and it's me and BT Urela and Golden Cermak, who owns Furious Photography, Daryl Banner and Seth Nicholas King, Mikey Lee, who am I forgetting? Scott Hildreth, SD Hildreth. It was just kind of weird. It was this crazy universal convergence of the 8 of us that kind of just birthed this group, and it's done well for all of us. I think we've all, or most of the guys have released a book at this point and seen a major spike in sales. So I'm pretty excited for
you guys are all like, hey, check out this guy's work, check out this guy's work.
Right. And I mean, with brands like Furious Photography, who has something like 1.7 million followers on Facebook, and BT Urela, who's a huge cover model and author himself, with names like that in there, and those guys pushing you. I mean, I've got all their phone numbers. We're all talking all the time. It really is like a brotherhood.
That is so cool. Well, congratulations.
So it's been quite the adventure in the last year or so.
Well, that's what you need. You need a community behind you willing to help push your work and share your work and really support each other. And it goes beyond just, the pre-bookmaking stuff of beta reading. You need that crowd of people after the fact really helping to spread that word.
Yeah, it's like a post-launch team, so to speak.
And, in the romance realm, where do you go to talk about your books and to share your books and to reach out new readers? What are you finding are your best outlets for that?
I use my fan page on Facebook for everything. I am terrible at Twitter, terrible about Twitter. And Instagram, I mean, I use my sexuality a lot to pull in new readers from the homosexual population, just because there is such a large, statistically speaking, group of homosexuals on Instagram. It's
I didn't know that.
Very much oriented towards the homosexual community. We do really, really well with it for some reason. Probably because we're all a bunch of vain people.
Beautiful things.
Right. Well, and I mean, I'm a bartender in a gay bar. I know a little bit about vanity. So I mean, I use whatever tools I can. And of course, book signings are a huge opportunity. And I've actually put one together just outside of Las Vegas. That was a pretty big success this year, and 2017 is looking to be about triple the size. We're looking to have about 120 authors there. So,
what event in Las Vegas?
It's Author Palooza. It's about 45 minutes outside of Las Vegas.
I missed that one. I'm actually from Vegas, and I missed that one. I was out of town that weekend.
Do a book signing. Is it just meet and greet and signing the books, or do you do any readings? How does that work?
So this year I do want to do a couple of readings. That's actually, putting together a book signing is a lot of stress and very expensive if you want it to be kind of up to par with the bigger book signings that are charging, $200, $250 a table. I am not charging table fees. If you stay at the resort, you get a free table. And it's $50 a night for a room at the hotel. And it's a big fundraiser for Mesquite Reads. It's in Mesquite. If you're from Vegas,
I do remember hearing about it. I was out that weekend, which is why I didn't attend.
So yeah, I mean, no table fees is huge for authors. I'm going to be there. Golden Cermak and Furious Photography will be there. Daryl Banner's going to be there. Most of the frat brothers are going to be there. And I've got some pretty big other names that are attending this year. I don't want to give too many away because I haven't announced any of them yet. But
what other genres are welcome at Author Palooza?
It is an all genre signing. I've got everything from children's books to erotica. A surprising amount of nonfiction, actually, this year.
How did you get involved with all of that?
My grandma lives in Mesquite, and her neighbor is the food and beverage director for the Eureka Casino and Resort, and she's also an author, and we had attended an event together that it bombed bad. It was really, really bad. They held it in an old folks home, and it did not go well. But then we were just talking over a few bottles of wine later that night, and we were like, we can do so much better. And with her being up in the executive level of the Erotica, she was like, I know I can get the space donated. If you can get the authors here, I can get the space and we'll make it happen. And I messaged her a few months later and I was like, hey, I've got 40 people that want to show up. And she was like, oh, you were serious. So we got the ball rolling on it and made it happen. And the executives were really, really impressed with last year's turnout, even though it wasn't a huge success in terms of readers attending. They were just surprised I filled the room. So they tripled the space I had and gave me a weekend. So we're hoping to get some more people in this year, and it should be a pretty solid event.
Authors, at least the indies that I've known, we're all very hungry for opportunities. We want to get out there. We want to spread the word about our books. So any opportunities available, we tend to jump on.
Right. And also, it's so cool that you aren't necessarily like, I mean, take Wizard World, for example. They have a lot of people, a lot of funding, all of the Stan Lee branded events. It's just amazing how much money is invested in that. And then you have this big event that you know the names of all the people involved, and you are directly involved with that. So that is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, these are mostly people that I've reached out to personally. I've developed relationships. I've maintained these relationships, and I think that's where a lot of indie authors specifically go wrong. I mean, we don't have a huge publishing house to back us. We've got us. The important part of marketing is to get your readers invested in you. Absolutely. If they're invested in you, your books will sell themselves. So, I mean, I'd say it's probably 75% who you are as a person and 25% you giving them a product that's worth paying for, of course. So that's a big part of how I've always been. It's a big part of how I run my business. My fans aren't fans, they're friends. I take personal interest. If they're missing for a while, I reach out to them, even on my fan page. I notice names go missing, and I'm like, oh, what the hell they're doing? And I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, everything okay? And I like to think that helps me stand out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that philosophy. You make a personal investment, and that's wonderful. It's not a surprise.
On last show too about you're selling yourself. You're selling you as a person. You actually have to be real in order to get people who are willing to become fans of yours. They have to like you first. Yeah,
because just in the last episode, we were talking with, you and Jason were talking with Armin and Joshua about, being real and not just shoving your work down people's throats. It's, you need to make the connections, and you need to sort of organically let them figure out who you are. And if they want to check out your work, they will.
I'd probably err on the side of not marketing enough. I do a lot of funny and heartfelt stuff on my fan page on Facebook, and I basically barely ever put up, hey, I've got this book. So there's obviously got to be some kind of balance in there. But, I mean, what I put up online as Willsin it's 100% true to me, but it's not 100% of me, if you know what I mean.
That makes sense.
You keep stuff back.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that there's any shame in letting people be aware of your work. Yeah. I think that it needs to be more than just your work.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Which is something that, I'm trying to figure out a nice balance between. I'm sure all of us at some level are also trying to figure out, like you just said, you could do more.
Well, like Armand said last week about, he's a coffee lover, and he ran contests about just trying to find a new coffee, and he had fans who ended up sending him a bunch of different types of coffee to try. Because that was just the goal of the contest, was give me a new coffee to try while I'm writing this book. And he was writing, it's called Green River Blend or something.
Yeah, that was so funny, and I love the M&M thing. How fans now, they know he loves M&Ms, so they'll bring him bags of M&Ms at events. That's so cool.
Exactly. Well, and David, you've got your gamer geek. That's the other part of your persona.
Oh, so yeah.
As you develop, your brand, that's part of it too. That's a big part of your life.
I really want to do like Twitch streaming and stuff like that. Nope. Twitch streaming is where you're playing video games and you're broadcasting it on the internet as you're playing, and you can interact with people at any moment in time. I definitely would love to do that, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of friends who do it.
Right. Well, and I've heard a lot of the game vloggers are getting their YouTube channels hijacked too.
Yeah, when you start drawing a lot of attention, you also draw a lot of unwanted attention.
Right.
And that's just sad. That's really sad that people will turn something that's potentially good into something terrible.
There are trolls everywhere, though.
Yeah, that's true. It happens everywhere, including in book reviews. I've seen authors attacked with bad book reviews because they pissed off the wrong person.
Right.
Not even necessarily that they pissed them off, but maybe just they didn't like your story, and so they're going to take it to the extreme.
Very few books are worth only 1 star, just for the effort that it takes to get a book out there. That's got to be worth 2 to start with.
At least no, but what I don't like is when a review goes completely out of its way to write a book about why they didn't like your book.
Yes.
So, you get the paragraph of, I hate this book, whatever, that's fine. But when you've got, the bitter diatribe of somebody who read your book and feels that you have ruined their life, so they're going to write
Tirade of evil words. Yeah, those hurt.
When I got my first bad review, luckily it was on Goodreads and not Amazon. I had prepared myself for it, and I told myself, David, you elicited some severe emotion in that person. You did your job.
That's true.
Absolutely.
And in the end, I don't remember who said it, but essentially reviews are for the readers, not for the writers.
Right.
To a certain degree, I agree with it, but I do like when you get even a bad review, as long as it's got good reasons for hating your book. You can learn from a bad review.
Yeah.
You can learn from a good review. In fact, when I released my first book as Abby Aiken, it was just a fairly short one, and I got 2 good reviews. They were both 4-star reviews that pointed out some problems. I actually took the risky step of contacting both those people and asking if they would elaborate on what they meant. It actually allowed me to create a better story the second time by avoiding some of the traps, because they pointed them out, and I realized, you know what? They're absolutely right. So that helped. I mean, it's not something to do to actually contact the reviewer most times. One of them was actually in fact, I think both of them I was connected to on Facebook. So I had more than just a reviewer to writer connection there.
Right. Well, that's awesome, because you took that weakness and you delved into it and you improved your work by doing so. That takes a lot of cojones.
But I did it as a girl, so
you become very protective over your work sometimes. So to admit that you're wrong, I mean, you're a big man for doing so.
It doesn't seem like that's the right association.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it sounds bad to say you get the boobs to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
hips.
Sorry, not trying to see.
Sorry.
How about guts? Everybody's got guts.
Yeah.
Ah.
Actually, one of my first blogs at Coffee Field Erotica, where we first met, was about exactly that, about how I remember Elle McPherson, an interview with her, saying they were asking her how she get so successful. She says one of the parts she said was, well, I basically had the balls to do it. And I thought, why don't women have an equivalent? Why do they have to resort to saying they had the balls to do something?
Ovaries.
It doesn't sound as good when you say ovaries. I mean, really, I don't know. The words for the female sexual organs they pale in comparison.
They're either derogatory or soft, usually.
Yeah, we don't have the good equivalents.
I'm just gonna start saying you've got a lot of tits. Like you've got the tits for it.
Yeah.
Let's make that a thing.
That.
I'm gonna make it a thing. It's gonna happen.
That's right. Hashtag you've got the tits.
Let me ask you this. So writing erotica, I mean, obviously there's a certain healthy amount of naughtiness to it, right? You also write mainstream fiction. So do you ever get down on yourself about it? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, I shouldn't have written this story, it's like, too much or something like that? Because, I mean, obviously sex it's a natural part of life, and you're just sort of contextualizing it and having it, make it a fun story. Do you ever feel like I've done it bad, like I've done something wrong?
I used to wonder if I would feel that way, but in the end, I wouldn't feel guilty about writing a book where people had a wonderful meal full of sensual delights and celebrated about it afterwards. It's just another aspect. I think there are still people who want us to feel bad about it, and they will cheapen it. People who criticize erotica and even romance, they'll point to what they see as the flaws, which I think are the strengths, which is that it's focused, in erotica's case, it's focused wholly on the physical part of the relationship outwardly. But good erotica, literary erotica maybe, but good erotica doesn't have to just be about all the tabs going into all the slots. If it's good erotica, it's going to make you feel by kind of getting inside you metaphorically as well. So yeah. I don't feel bad about it at all. And it doesn't matter what other genres I write in, they're all separate. And I don't think one brings another one down.
At the end of the day, if you've got a good story, you've got a good story.
Exactly.
If you've entertained somebody, that was the goal.
Oh, okay. That's an excellent response, actually. I like that.
I don't really write in mainstream fiction. So I honestly, I don't feel bad about it at all. I mean, it's like Lola said, sex is part of everyday life. And there should be no shame in it. We as a people, I can't even say as a nation, because it's really a global epidemic, that we body shame, and sex is supposed to be this dirty little secret that happens in the bedroom, and I don't think that's true. I'm actually part of a naturist group, and I think the human body in all of its shapes and forms should be celebrated. And
our society doesn't understand that sex is a normal part of life. It has its place.
I dare say sex is a necessary part of life.
Yeah, but we don't seem to understand where the limits of it are, because, as a mom, nursing my child, well, boobs have been a sexual item for men for years and years and years. They don't understand that their original intent is to nurse a child. So now when I go to nurse a child in public, I'm shamed because I'm doing what is normal and natural with something that, has been perceived as sexual.
Our societies are tending now to just simply equate nudity equals sex or sexuality.
Period, yeah.
And there's you can see all kinds of violence on TV. Of course it's fake violence with throats being cut or whatever. An episode of Medium, I remember, I use this as an example quite a lot, where Jason Priestley guest starred as a killer. They actually showed him cutting the woman's throat. She was found naked in the bath, and they'd had her posed so her hand was over her nipple. So it's all right to see the blood and the cut, but you cannot see one of those evil little nipples.
Yeah, the whole thing about the breastfeeding in public being an issue, that makes me really mad. There's nothing sexual about a woman breastfeeding her child. And I think that anybody that has that problem, they have 360 degrees that they can look in. They just need to pick one that they can't see that in. That's their problem.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But it goes back to the fact that, like you just asked about it, do you feel bad about writing sex? No, we don't feel bad about writing sex. It has a time, it has a place, it's entertaining, it's interesting, but it's not whole life. It's one little portion of it. Just as, nursing a baby, I'm doing something that is normal and natural with my body that is meant to feed a child. But somebody else who can't see the distinction goes, "Oh my God, boob, that's sexual. Oh, I don't want to see this."
Yes, that's so.
I'm the bad guy. Yeah, think about the children.
No, that's absurd. That's an absurd thing that I think needs to go away. Because it's stupid. That's stupid.
But on the other hand, the fact that it is there and in existence is kind of a potential bonus for us as writers, because if we're writing the stuff that is considered taboo, even if it's kind of natural, it increases sort of the niche value of what we do. So I guess we can play both sides of the fence to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like that it's there, but the fact that it is there, I might try and use it.
Well, I recall a long time ago, I used to do product placement in TV and film. And there was one episode, because we did product placement for weeds. They did sexualize. There was the main character. Her breasts were really engorged because she didn't have a baby with her to nurse. So she actually made one of the other guys actually had to nurse her. So she did sexualize it. She's like, "Oh, you have to be the baby. You have to be the baby." And they did make it a sexual thing.
I've made a bunch of covers for that genre. It's fun. I get to see boobs. But it's not a genre I would write. And the people who are writing it may not want to do it themselves, but that's the thing. That's the separation of writer from story. I've written girl-on-girl scenes. It's hardly likely I'm actually going to be able to ever partake in one.
Well, it's a fantasy. I mean, to a degree, all of the stories that we write, whether they're intended for, kids to adults, they're fantasies.
Exactly.
It's fiction. It's a story.
But some people don't seem to understand the distinctions, the differences between that. They want to associate everything all together.
They're wrong.
I mean, it's an even bigger problem. It's an even bigger problem in the gamer community, the whole separation between reality and fiction thing. So it's an ordeal, I tell you. There are people keep trying to blame video games for all the violence that's going on right now, and it's ridiculous. I'm like, nope, that's just bad people.
We've got games everywhere. Well, now using games though, do you find that games help inspire you in your writing, David?
Absolutely, yes.
Now I know Rainblade. When I read it, it had a very gamer feel, at least to me. It reminded me, I think I've said it before, the days when I used to play EverQuest.
Oh yes, there's a lot of inspiration that I've taken from a lifetime of gaming, and I put it into the Rainblade. I also put it into Onyx, which is my next book. It's actually the first book that I wrote, but now I'm fixing it up. I mean, Onyx the Half-Hero Dragon is essentially a video game in a book, in every way that it can be. But the Rainblade, yeah, it definitely has tons of inspirations from, I mean, just to name a few, Assassin's Creed, The Legend of Zelda, Mega Man. It's got, countless, really.
Well, and I think that can be said of any author of any passion they have. I mean, whether it be gaming or reading or hiking or boating or fishing or camping or what have you, I think all of those things have specific communities and specific feels to those communities that are going to translate into their work. So I think, honestly, it doesn't surprise me that you say it had a very gamer feel to it, because there are certain aspects of the gaming community that are very niche to the gaming community, and anybody who's kind of dabbled in that will pick up on those, I think. There is a Star Trek reference in every one of my books.
That's awesome.
One Star Trek reference every single book I've written.
That's really cool. It rewards your reader when they pick up on that. It's an extra little cherry on top.
Right.
It goes back to that whole adage of write what you know, which is hammered into writers very early on in their careers. But writing what you know doesn't always have to specifically be exactly the thing. And we had to talk about this earlier today. David, you are from a gamer background, so your stories are going to have that gamer feel. For me, I write mostly paranormal. Do I know what bloodlust is like? No, I don't. But I do know what addiction is like, having been a smoker for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I was able to turn quitting smoking into bloodlust, or translate that into that for my readers. And I'm sure you do the same thing in your writing as well.
Not so much in that case, I don't really have an addiction to deal with, but I tend to sprinkle musical terms throughout, just as part of the prose, just because of my background in music as well. And
your style is very lyrical as it is.
Well, yeah, I suppose I spent 20 years slaving away trying to be a songwriter. And that's what allowed me to move into flash fiction fairly easily, and to try and get larger concepts condensed into, or even distilled more into, like one line or a paragraph where you would normally use a page. And that was good fun, and it was a good, easy step across from songwriting. But yeah, it has influenced, I guess, the structuring of at least of sentences and paragraphs. I usually find a sentence might sound wrong just for the rhythm, and it has to have a word changed.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. And actually, part of writing for me is you get to explore and research things that you wouldn't necessarily do in reality. For example, with the Rainblade, I visited Stonehenge. I went there, and we did an after-hours tour, and I walked underneath and in between all of the trilithons, and I felt the sense of, of my scale to the freaking massive stone monument around me, and I felt tiny. And it's awe-inspiring, and it's just like you're standing there like wondering, like, how is this even possible? I mean, I visited a lot of the villages and towns that I wrote about. Just doing research is half the fun. That's what I like to do. I mean, part of it is life. Part of it is you take a hike and you feel inspired by that. You see a person on the street, you feel inspired by that. But part of it is researching things that you wouldn't necessarily normally think about.
Mm-hmm.
Even just today, we went for just a walk around the strip here in Vegas, and as soon as we got home, I just had to jot down some concepts. Just things occur to you, as with anyone who writes. I think things just occur to you as you're walking around, and you don't always have the facility to write it down, and it's pretty noisy, so I couldn't record it in the phone. And you don't know if you'll use them for anything. And what I wrote down about my feelings on Vegas might not end up being about Vegas. It might be about some mythical town.
It's a seed, and you felt it was important. I mean, when you're writing, when you're developing anything, you look at the world differently. You look at people differently. And you just start to pick up on all these little cues from your surroundings and your experiences. And yeah, you jot it down. And maybe it becomes something, maybe it doesn't, but you felt it was important enough to jot it down. So it may mean something later. And that's awesome.
For sure.
You definitely take a lot of people watching wherever you go when you become a student of humanity as a writer.
Yeah, and I love that turn of phrase. You used it before. I love it. It's really great.
It really is, that's the bottom line of it, because you see how other people are acting with each other. You see their interactions, you see their mannerisms, and whether consciously or subconsciously, as you go to write that next scene, you may end up putting that in there, and that becomes a character quirk or a trait, and it's just because you had seen something earlier in that day.
Exactly.
We went out to the Grand Canyon yesterday, and there were these sparse little townships along the way. Or it might only be one that just goes for ages. In the end, I start to write stories for this, or try to work stuff out. I'm trying to work out, what do they do to earn a living? What do they do to fill their days? Is it running drugs, or are they just all retired, or have they got some kind of underground network where they, I don't know, slave trade? Who knows? I don't know what they do, but I love to try and work it out.
I've got a friend who's got a story using the sex slave trade with the little towns and on the outskirts of the city. So yeah, just like that.
Creepy, but also cool.
So yeah, you look around. Everything becomes something of inspiration for you. I'm sure, David, you feel the same way as well.
Oh yeah, I have a steady stream of inspiration for any erotica I could ever want to write. I'm a bartender in a gay bar. I see horny people all day long, every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you get to see, truth is stranger than fiction. So you probably have some even better real stories to tell than the ones you could possibly make up.
I actually had one of my customers today tell me that I should take notes on people's tabs at each drink they come get. Just take a little note about them at that moment in time, and then just start using them, build characters off of them. And I was like, that's actually not a terrible idea, because as people drink more throughout the night, their personality shifts, and it's usually a very steady progression one way or the other, and then a light switch. Once they have that one too many shots, it's like someone hits a light switch and they flip to either very happy or very angry. One or the other.
That's really cool, and it's true. I've seen it. I mean, I'm not a bartender, but I've seen it. I've had to escort some drunk friends around, and it's not fun, but you do it because you're friends.
Right.
That's right. That's
or you live in Vegas, anywhere near the Strip.
There you go.
I'm glad I'm past I'm aging myself, but I'm past those party days.
That's a good thing. Definitely a good thing.
Yeah, I don't mind going out for a little fun every now and again, but I don't think I could handle the party lifestyle.
It impacts on writing time anyway.
Yeah, I've got too many words to write.
Well, let me ask each of you this. Okay, so for our viewers, if you were to recommend your best erotic work, what would you tell them?
I would personally say start with Porter. Porter is definitely by far leaps and bounds ahead of where I was when I started the United series. I'd say it's my best work to date.
It depends on what you're after, because my most recent release in December was much closer to erotica than romance. It has a strong romantic thread, but it's not romance. It doesn't follow the rules of romance. So I actually think it's my best writing. It's called The Last 3 Days. So that's probably the one I would recommend. But if you want romance, that's not the one. Probably Indigo would be the other one, because it's still about 20,000 words. It's a paranormal, and I think it has the best reviews.
I think as far as your shorts go, This I Can Do.
Oh, yeah.
That was always been one of my favorites. But again, that one, I connect with that one because that's about the frazzled mother trying to take care of her kid.
And it's only a short one as well.
And the husband, the shining knight of a husband coming to the rescue. So yeah, I connect with that one a lot more.
I think a lot of women would.
It's all personal preference too on what you are looking for in a story. And I connect with that one because I have been through the frazzled mom moments.
You were actually part of the inspiration for that one because you were struggling through the very early stages of your second child.
Oh, yeah.
I had to write a story for an anthology that Summer Marston was putting together. In fact, I tried it for another anthology that another writer I know was doing. And she said, I love it, but I don't do kid-related stuff at all. In my books, I don't do family stuff. So someone was putting together another one, and I'd already got her to beta read it. So she said, I'll have it if she won't. And there we go.
There you
It
go.
sprang from there.
Katie/Rosalind, what would you recommend to your readers?
My co-written stuff, I really enjoy writing with Willsin, as either Willsin or Abby, depending on which ones we've put out. I think our sex education series was probably the most fun. And that was a short trilogy, and it was, what was it, extra credit, extracurricular, and extra classes?
Yeah.
And,
A good bit of power play stuff. Older man, younger woman, English accent for the guy.
Yeah, of course, we had to go with that. The accents play a big part in
both of
some
us.
of our stories. I've actually tried to get Willsin to read a few things for me just so I can have that beautiful Australian accent.
That's right. She's spoken very highly of your vocal qualities.
Well, he's got it, and it's on YouTube. We'll have to find the link of
Yeah.
you reading that snippet of your last story.
That's right.
And we were sharing that all over Facebook, and you were getting a lot of good responses.
A lot
because
of love for that.
you know what? American women do love an accent. That's just it. It doesn't really even matter which accent it is, as long as it's not an American accent. We seem to just gravitate towards it.
I think, I love accents too. I mean, we were in England and Scotland and Ireland. I mean, some of the women out there, I mean, whew, just the accents alone, just the voices, you hear somebody behind you and you have this beautiful, Scottish accent. And you're like, oh, okay, I gotta look at that. Yeah.
I hear you. I definitely hear you on that.
And I think it goes both ways as well. I mean, me being in Australia, everybody was obsessed with my accent. And I was like, I have an accent. You have an accent.
It's true. And when you're out of place, you're exotic.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also find that for me, it works the other way. If somebody looks exotic and sounds Australian, I used to work with a Chinese girl, like Chinese born as far as I know, but raised in Australia, broader Australian accent than I've ever had. But because she was so obviously physically Chinese, when she spoke, it was kind of a nice kind of jarring effect. It was really quite good.
That's wonderful. You guys could write very exotic characters like that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I think, what was the one we did? Slowpoke, right?
Yes.
Where we did the Australian and the Southerner.
Yes.
And it was all about the accent. The entire story really had to do with the Australian loving the American Southern accent, and the American girl absolutely just loving that drawling Australian accent.
Have you guys put that into an audiobook yet?
We've talked about it.
Yeah. Well, we just got to rework it.
That would really bring it to life. Honestly. What about producing audiobooks? Have any of you guys taken your erotic works and turned them into audiobooks?
I haven't looked heavily into it, but I don't think that the Amazon option is actually available to Australian authors. I might be wrong on that in total, or it might have changed since I believed that was the case.
It is available. I know Lola Stark just got an offer, it's probably been 1.5 years ago, for her entire trilogy to be put on Audible.
But that might be a case of someone who's actually sort of getting good sales, being approached by them.
Or maybe
Audible, you can get on and you can say, this is my price range, and show me actors that'll read it and producers that'll produce it within that range.
Have you guys ever explored ACX? I mean, I think Katie has.
Yes, I have. I don't know if it works for Australia yet, but we can check into that for sure.
Yeah.
You guys should, especially if you have that story that revolves purely around those accents. Do it. That would be amazing.
You can do it independently, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we talked with Brian Tan a few weeks back, and he was telling us about using Audacity as a program to do the audio mastering.
Okay.
I used to use Audacity. I used to do voice work on like a couple things, and I would record both the auditions and the final in Audacity.
So something to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's very easy to use. It's free, and it's quality, good stuff.
David, did you say that you were looking into audio? Yes, no?
I have not yet. I'd like to, but I mean, I've looked into it. It's just not a viable option for me.
ACX does allow you to do revenue sharing, or you can pay the narrator up front. Now, the revenue sharing is whenever you make a sale, they will also be paid then. There's no cost to you. Just something to consider. It's really fun. I just did it through ACX for my book, and it was really easy.
Does anybody have anything that they want to share as far as new releases, sales, anything they want to put out there for the audience?
The Long Story Playing House coming out soon, hopefully by the end of October.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Waiting on the lovely Sassy to edit it for me.
Oh, she's doing the editing.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, I can't wait to read it once it's done, because I remember the original.
Yeah.
So, and you've added, what, probably 3 times as much to it now?
It's about twice as long as it was.
Okay, twice as long.
That's what she said.
All right. Great.
Oh, coming in the back way, and that's what she said. We started and ended on a good note.
Now you know why I'm friends with this guy.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, on that note, guys, thank you so much for being our guests, Willsin and
Thank you.
David. It's been wonderful having you on the show, and we'll get everything posted in the links below on the video, so make sure you've got those sent to me if you haven't already. And we'll be back next week with another couple of authors to introduce you guys and some more fun topics to talk about. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Spilling Ink.